In the forests of northern Mozambique, a man tips back his head and makes a strange sound, a loud trill, followed by a grunt. Brr. He is not talking to another person. There is no one else around. He is calling a wild bird. And the astonishing thing is, the bird answers. A small, drab, sparrow-sized creature flits out of the trees, chattering back at him, flicking its tail, and begins to lead him through the bush, flying ahead, waiting, flying ahead again, guiding him deliberately to a wild beehive hidden somewhere he could never have found alone. This is not a trained bird. Nobody raised it. Nobody taught it. It is completely wild, and it has chosen to help him. When they reach the hive, the man will take the honey and leave the bird the wax. It is one of the only known partnerships between a human being and a free, wild animal anywhere on Earth. And it may be older than farming, older than writing, tens of thousands of years old. A conversation between two species. And we can now prove, with hard science, that it is real. This is the human wild, where the past is still alive in you. Today, the true story of the honeyguide, a wild bird that leads humans to honey and strikes a bargain with them for its share. You'll hear the experiments that proved the bird and the human are genuinely talking to each other. You'll learn why this bird speaks in regional accents, why it should be impossible for it to know how to do any of this, and the dark secret hidden in its nest. This is one of the strangest, truest relationships in all of nature, and almost nobody knows it exists. Start with the bargain itself, because the bargain is what makes this unlike almost anything else in nature. The bird is called the greater honeyguide. On its own, it has a problem it cannot solve. It desperately wants to eat beeswax. It is one of the very few creatures on Earth that can actually digest the stuff, along with the bee larvae inside a hive. But it can't get into a hive. It's a small bird. It can't break open a tree trunk full of angry bees, and it can't survive the stings. It can find the nest. It flies the forest and knows where the hives are, but finding is all it can do. The feast is sealed behind a wall it cannot breach. Now, look at the human. The human has exactly the opposite problem. A person can absolutely open a beehive with tools, with smoke to calm the bees, with fire and an axe. What a person can't easily do is find the nest in the first place, hidden high in a tree or deep in a hollow across miles of forest. So each side holds precisely the half the other is missing. The bird knows where, the human knows how. And somewhere in the deep past, the two struck a deal. The bird leads, the human opens, and they split the spoils, honey for the person, wax and grubs for the bird. Think about how remarkable that is. This isn't a pet. It isn't a trained falcon or a herding dog, animals we domesticated and taught over generations. This is a wild bird that owes us nothing, cooperating with us of its own accord for mutual profit. Scientists call that a mutualism, and one between humans and a free-living wild animal is so rare it's almost unique. Which raises the obvious, thrilling question: is the bird really communicating with the person? Or does it just happen to fly toward hives while the human tags along? For a long time, that question had no proper answer, until a scientist decided to test it. Her name is Claire Spottiswoode, a biologist who went to the Nyassa Reserve in northern Mozambique to work with the Yao people, traditional honey hunters who still forage with the birds. And she designed an experiment to settle once and for all whether the bird understands the human or just follows a moving person. But first, understand how old the puzzle she was tackling really is. The partnership was written down as early as 1588, when a Portuguese missionary in what is now Mozambique noticed a small brown bird slipping into his church to nibble the wax of his candles, and learned from local people that this same bird led them to wild honey. For centuries afterward, the guiding was treated by outsiders as a traveler's tale, a charming exaggeration. Some scientists doubted it happened at all. So when Spottiswoode arrived, she wasn't just studying a bird. She was testing a 400-year-old claim that many had dismissed. And she knew exactly how the guiding looked in the field. The bird approaches with a special chattering call, flashes the white feathers in its tail, then flies a short way toward the nest and waits, looking back until the human follows, repeating that leapfrog tree by tree, sometimes over hundreds of meters, until they arrive. Here was the key insight. The Yao honey hunters use a very specific sound to call the bird, that trill and grunt, the brr-hmm. It is passed down from father to son, generation to generation, and the hunters insist it is how you summon a honey guide. So Spottiswoode made recordings, the real brr-hmm call, and two kinds of control sounds, the honey hunters simply calling out random Yao words, and the calls of a different, unrelated bird. Then honey hunters walked the bush, playing one of the three sounds every 7 seconds, and the researchers tracked with GPS what the birds actually did. If the bird only cared that a human was nearby, all three sounds should work equally, but if the specific call carried meaning, the brr-hmm would win. The results, published in the journal Science in 2016, were stunning. The traditional brr-hmm call more than doubled the chance of being guided by a honey guide, from around 33% up to 66%. And it lifted the overall odds of actually being led to a bee's nest from about 17% to 54%. Put simply, making the right sound more than tripled a hunter's chance of finding honey. The bird was not just noticing a human. It was listening for a specific signal, a sound that means, roughly, I am looking for bees' nests and I want to work together, and responding to it. As Spottiswoode put it, the bird attaches meaning to the call. This was hard, GPS-tracked, experimental proof of two-way communication between a person and a wild animal. Real interspecies conversation, measured in the field. And then the story got even stranger, because it turns out the honey guide doesn't understand one universal human sound. It understands the local one. The Yao in Mozambique use their brr-hmm trill. But hundreds of miles away in northern Tanzania, another people, the Hadza, hunt honey with the very same birds, and they use a completely different signal, not a trill and grunt, but a melodic whistle. Two human cultures, two totally different calls for the exact same purpose. So Spottiswoode, working with the anthropologist Brian Wood, asked a beautiful question. What happens if you play a Hadza whistle to a Mozambican bird, or a Yao trill to a Tanzanian one? The answer, published in 2023, revealed something remarkable. The birds preferred their local accent. Honey guides in the Yao's territory were more than 3 times more likely to respond to the Yao brr-hmm than to the foreign Hadza whistle. And in Hadza territory, it flipped exactly the other way. The birds there were more than 3 times as likely to respond to the local whistle. The birds have, in effect, learned the specific dialect of the humans they grew up alongside. This is culture on both sides. The humans pass their call down through the generations, and the birds in each region learn to recognize their own community's humans. The scientists called it a sign of cultural coevolution. 2 species shaping each other's traditions across the same patch of ground for a very long time. Here is where the story turns genuinely astonishing and a little dark, because there is a deep mystery buried inside this partnership. How does the bird know how to do any of this? And the answer forces us into the honey guide's terrible secret. The greater honey guide is what's called a brood parasite. It never builds a nest, never raises its own young. Instead, the female sneaks her eggs into the nests of other birds, bee-eaters, kingfishers, hoopoes, deep in their burrows, and abandons them there. And what happens next is grim. The honey guide chick hatches early, blind and featherless, and it is born with sharp hooks on the tip of its bill. It uses those hooks to kill its foster siblings, the host's own chicks, biting and grasping them until they die, so that it alone will receive all the food the host parents bring. Then the hooks recede as it grows, and it fledges and flies off, raised by parents of an entirely different species who never taught it a single thing about being a honey guide. Now sit with what that means for the guiding. This bird was raised by kingfishers or bee-eaters. It never met its real parents. No adult honey guide ever showed it how to find a hive, or how to lead a human, or what the brrr sound means. And yet it does all of it, flawlessly, which can only mean one thing. The guiding behavior is not learned from its parents. It is written into the bird, inherited, instinctive, baked into its genes. The impulse to seek out humans and lead them to honey is born inside a creature that has never seen another of its own kind do it. And here's why that matters so much. An instinct that complex doesn't appear overnight. For guiding to be genetic, this partnership must be old enough for natural selection to have carved the behavior into the species itself. This isn't a habit a few clever birds picked up. It's an ancient bargain, written into the bird's very biology over what may be hundreds of thousands of years. Step back and ask the bigger question. Why did this matter so much to humans that a bird evolved around us? The answer is that honey isn't just a treat. For our ancestors, it may have been one of the most valuable foods on Earth. Honey is almost pure energy, dense, sweet, packed with sugar in a way almost nothing else in a forager's world is. For a hunter-gatherer, stumbling onto a wild hive is like striking a vein of gold. A huge hit of calories, plus the fat and protein-rich bee larvae inside. Among the Hadza of Tanzania, one of the last hunter-gatherer peoples on Earth, honey is consistently ranked as the single most prized food in the diet, and bee products make up somewhere around 15 to 20% of everything they eat. That is an astonishing share for one food group, and a large slice of it comes courtesy of the bird. The anthropologist Brian Wood, who has spent years living and foraging with the Hadza, found that honey guides increase the rate at which the Hadza find bee nests by a staggering 560%, roughly 5 times more hives than they would find alone, and lead them to richer nests high in the baobab trees than they would otherwise reach. Wood estimates that 8 to 10% of the Hadza's entire annual diet is obtained with the help of this one bird. The honey guide isn't a novelty or a charming story. For people living this way, it is a genuine, measurable pillar of the food supply. There's a deeper idea some researchers raise here, and it's worth flagging honestly as an idea, not a proven fact. Honey and other energy-rich foods may have played a real role in feeding the demands of the human brain, an organ that burns a huge fraction of our energy and needs a rich, concentrated diet to run. In this view, a reliable line on honey wasn't a luxury. It may have been part of what let our ancestors afford such expensive brains. We should be careful here. This is a hypothesis. One strand in a tangled debate about human diet and evolution, not settled science. But the core point beneath it is solid. For people who live by foraging, the honey guide unlocks one of the richest energy sources in their entire world. That's reason enough for a partnership to run deep. Now, it would be lovely to end on a picture of perfect harmony between bird and human. But the truth is more interesting than that, because this partnership includes betrayal on both sides, and that's what makes it feel so real. Start with the humans. This is not a folk rumor. It was documented in Brian Wood's peer-reviewed study of the Hadza. After taking the honey, Hadza hunters were observed to deliberately hide, bury, and even burn the leftover wax comb, denying the bird its promised reward. Why sabotage your own partner? Because of a belief that a hungry honey guide is a more motivated honey guide. Keep the bird a little desperate, the thinking goes, and it will guide you more keenly next time. rather than flying off full and satisfied. The researchers called this exactly what it is: manipulation. The astonishing part is that the partnership survives it anyway. The birds still find scraps, still come back, still guide. Cooperation, it turns out, can persist even when one side is quietly cheating the other. Sometimes the human doesn't pay up, and the relationship holds regardless. And the bird? There's a long-told story that the honeyguide takes revenge on people who don't leave a reward, leading cheaters next time, not to honey but to danger, to a snake or a buffalo instead. It's a wonderful tale, and you'll hear it repeated often. But we'll be honest, because this channel is, that revenge story is folklore, not established science. There's no solid evidence the bird deliberately punishes anyone. What is likely true is simpler and still telling. A bird that isn't rewarded may simply lose interest in a stingy partner and be less inclined to guide them again. Not vengeance, just a business relationship, quietly breaking down. Even the honey badger, an animal often said to team up with the honeyguide the way humans do, turns out to be more legend than proven fact. That particular partnership is surprisingly poorly documented, whatever the wildlife films imply. The human bond is the one we can actually prove. So here is where we've arrived. A wild bird and a human being who found each other in the deep past and worked out how to talk. A genuine, two-way, dialect-rich conversation carved by evolution into the bird's genes and passed by culture through the human's generations. It is one of the most extraordinary relationships our species has ever formed with another, and it is quietly disappearing. The reason is simple and a little sad. As the modern world reaches deeper into these landscapes, people buy sugar in shops instead of hunting wild honey in the forest. Younger generations don't learn the calls. They don't go out with the birds. And where the humans stop calling, the conversation ends because it takes both sides to keep it alive. In regions where honey hunting has faded, the guiding is fading with it. The birds, with no one to answer, are forgetting how to talk to us. A partnership that took hundreds of thousands of years to build can unravel in a generation or two of shop-bought sugar. And that's the quiet weight of this story. When a language dies, we mourn it. But this is a language shared between two entirely different species. One of the only conversations we ever learn to have with a wild animal, and it is going silent in our lifetime, mostly unnoticed. We spend fortunes searching space for any hint of another mind to talk to. And all the while, in the forests of Africa, a small brown bird has been talking to us for longer than we've had writing, and we are letting it fall quiet. So the next time someone tells you that humans and wild animals can't truly understand each other, tell them about the honeyguide, the little bird that calls back, strikes a deal, speaks in accents, and leads a person through the forest to a treasure neither could reach alone. We were never entirely separate from the wild. Once we spoke with it, and at least one wild voice is still out there, waiting to see if we'll answer. If you want to see another way, these same peoples turned deep knowledge of the natural world into survival, a hunt that uses no weapon at all, just the human body and the midday heat, to run an antelope to exhaustion across the desert. That story is waiting for you next. It might be the only thing more astonishing than a bird that talks to us. This is the human wild. Keep listening. I'll see you out there.